Thank you for meeting with us today, for one. But tell us who you are and what you did before and what you're doing now.
So my name is Dollries. I was used to be the CEO and president of Innovating Labeling Solutions, and sold the business a few years back, or a year back now, and just now on the board of Brook and Whittle, but mostly retired at this point.
Awesome. Now, how long were you at ILS?
24 years. So we started the company in 1996, and doing conventional printing. Then 2005, actually jumped into digital print and went down the path of really recreating the business into a mostly digital focused business.
How did you make the decision to get into digital?
Well, it's interesting because we were starting to see a lot of Skew proliferation within the label and packaging marketplace, and that Skew proliferation was really not easy to produce on conventional flexographic presses. Lots of plate changes, lots of cost with those plates themselves, and then the changeover. And so we had some customers, and we started actually outsourcing a little bit while we were investigating what the best digital platform was going to be for the business. So it was probably 6 or 9 months that we were outsourcing some of that product before we made the final decision as far as the technology we were going to go with.
Jay, you've been involved in Dscoop for as long as anyone. Why is that? What have you gotten out of your involvement in the community that has really mattered to you and your company over the years?
So I've been to every North American Dscoop, and I've probably been to a majority of the Dscoops around the world. So 2006 was, I believe it was February or March of 2006 was the first Dscoop down right off of Sanibel Island. And that was, just following our press install in 2005. And I call it a kind of a kickstart for our business because, we knew what we kind of wanted to do, but we didn't know a lot about the digital marketplace. And so we took those learnings and kind of catapulted what we were doing based on the things that we were learning as we were getting into the marketplace. And Dscoop has been a critical part because every single conference I go to, I tell people there's not been one around the world that I've gone to where I haven't come away with at least one idea that I felt could transform my business. And we would bring those back and we would work on implementing, those ideas that we had a genesis at a Dscoop conference when we got back to our plant and started working with the rest of the team. So there could have been process items that we would implement. I met the Label Track's president, Ken Meinhardt, at a Dscoop conference. He sat at a round table with me, and I talked to him about the challenges that we had, and he and his team worked with us on how to implement these automation tools that are now generally available. So that's a great example of where we came away from that, and within the next 6 months, we had tools that we could change the way that we were sending jobs to our presses, and those things just kept going from there. The relationships that we built, either with different people within the community or suppliers within the community, allowed us to turn those ideas, and some of it was collaboration. What are you doing that we're not doing? What are we doing that you're not doing? And created efficiencies within our business, created, marketing opportunities. We did some things online that we probably never would have. There were products that were developed that, we took advantage of. And I'm not saying every idea that we came back with was, 100% winner, but they were ideas that then may have had a change that actually were successful.
Well, you can't come back with those ideas if you don't go seek them out, right? One interesting thing about your career, Jay, has been how early you embraced the whole idea of digital transformation at your company. I'm wondering if you look back now on the last 10 years or so, what stands out to you as important about that digital transformation that so many people are talking about now that you actually helped to lead, besides a few sleepless nights, I'm sure.
Well, there's always sleepless nights within a business when you own it. So that's just part of the game. But yeah, during the digital transformation, there were a lot of challenges. We had this idea of what we were going to do. I remember very distinctly, we bought our first press, and the HP team was very much trying to work with us on converting our conventional flexo jobs over to digital. And I remember saying, that's not our intent. We'll get there. Our intent is to create a different way of going to market. And we wanted to concentrate on that. And so we did. We looked at, how we can do it, what we can do, how we can go to market differently. And it was challenging in the beginning because, as you said, it was very early on in the digital transformation. So we were doing a tremendous amount of education, but we got to sit down in front of a lot of companies that wouldn't have talked to us previously because we were now talking about digital print, and everybody was interested in what that meant and what it could mean to their brands. And so it opened doors that we weren't getting open with just conventional printing. And it differentiated us because we had something different to talk about than anybody else that was coming in the door.
How long for that education aspect? How long from the time that you jumped into the digital waters till you really start to see the momentum of your clients jumping on board?
So it was varying, and it certainly took a lot longer in the beginning. I remember we did a lot of case studies, as we were getting the successes, and the more case studies you had, the easier it made the job. But it was still challenging because in some cases we were asking companies to, spend more money on their label, but we were showing where they were getting results that were growing their brand by dramatic amounts.
Oh, now I'm intrigued. So what kind of metrics could you use to talk about that offset in increased cost? Like when you said you were, building their brand more effectively, what were you able to provide to substantiate that?
So we worked closely with some of the early companies that worked with us, and they gave us what their sales figures were when we went into the process, and how much that brand grew in the first year. And some of those numbers were pretty dramatic. I mean, some of them were over 100%. It depended on the size of the brand, but we had some where the growth was 30% on a pretty good sized number to begin with. And so the cost, the incremental cost of the label itself was very small relative to what the growth of the product was.
So your clients were able to, they were obviously working with you, hand in hand, to be able to see that lift. Because, in a lot of print areas, you don't get to see through to the effect that it's having. So you are obviously having very different conversations and working in a much more collaborative way than many others.
Yes, it was all collaboration. Yeah, it was all collaboration. We generally didn't work with the purchasing organization. It was mostly with the marketing teams. And Eric would embed himself with those guys, and once they were willing to pull the trigger, it was I want to say it's almost magical, some of the things that we were able to do, because some of these brands were using very basic labels because they were trying to keep the cost down. And it was really cost prohibitive to do, 4-color process graphics and high-end graphics on products. And we were able to do those things much more cost effectively. But it was costing more than a basic 2-color label that they may have been using on a product previously.
Wow. Now, fast forward from those times to now, like how is everybody caught up, or how do you stay ahead at this point?
Look, there's more people that have the technology, but I would say there's still most of the companies out there aren't selling the true capabilities of what digital can offer. They look at it as a way of reducing their internal costs. So they'll put things on digital where it's cheaper for them to do it, to manufacture it digitally. We continued to go to market with, here's what you can do for your brand in order to, enhance your position in the marketplace, to grow what you're doing. To me, people haven't caught up on some of those things because it's a harder sell.
Did you have a formal sales training to kind of share that approach?
We had what we referred to it as more of a mentoring. So the sales process is the same, right? But mentoring people on how do you show the values and what are the values of digital print? Because it's not just on what shows up on the shelf. You can reduce inventory, print in a more on-demand basis for clients. It depends on what their needs are and what the value proposition is for those clients. And that's the key thing: is what's the value for your end client? Is it a branding opportunity? Is it an inventory opportunity? What are their pain points that you can help to address with the technology?
I'm constantly blown away at the fact that just seems kind of like obvious that that's how you should be selling digital, actually anything. Why does it seem atypical to have that mindset?
When we were just doing conventional printing, Chris, we were in kind of the same boat, right? You have service, you have quality. Quality is almost a given for even doing business with anyone. So you have a service model and you have, print technology. And if you can drive efficiencies and you're good at driving efficiencies, then cost is your method of changing someone, right? It's either cost or service, or in the case of digital, you have a couple other levers that you can, pull. So you just have to look at what the opportunities are. And what I'll say is, if somebody changes to you for price, they're going to leave you for price, right? Relationships are built on value.
Okay. Now, a follow up to that. Did you have a sense of what's your lifetime value of since putting digital on the floor? Can you measure like if they, those price oriented clients, did they stick around for so long? And then how long does a typical value driven print customer stay around?
Generally, forever, as long as you're continuing to bring value, right? A price driven, certainly we had customers where we got because of our price, and we probably lost them at some point because of price. Unless you can, once you have them, if you can start bringing value to them in other ways, then it becomes a different relationship. But if the only reason they came to you and the only reason they stay with you is price, then at some point somebody is going to need business and they're going to sell it at a lower price.
You guys did that seemingly really well at ILS, and you do. I think your company did a really good job and still does of presenting that online with your website and your case studies and the artwork that goes into the marketing of that. I'm awestruck by some of it, and there's a lot of energy in those success stories. Like the digital printed packaging on the retail shelf alone, like all those stories that came out of ILS and still do. It's really energizing I think for the industry to see what it can do for a client. It's one thing to sell a brochure for X dollars and to your point earlier, save money or whatever, but it's completely else to disrupt a retail shelf, walking down aisle 6 and glancing up at the right and changing the way people perceive something based on digital printed packaging is a very real thing, is it not? Is that an exciting thing to be involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we saw more and more products of ours going on retail shelves, I mean, that's always an exciting thing for everybody within the organization, right? I mean, to see that, and you have more and more opportunities over time to make those differences, and it's really an entire team that's making the success for, from the production team to the sales team to the internal team, right? It's a combined approach that allows those successes to be there. The other thing, when we got into digital, prior to that, we never had anybody in marketing. It wasn't until we got into digital that we hired a marketing person and started that whole approach of going to market in a different way.
And not just the way you present it to the world through marketing, but I would imagine there's a lot of interesting conversations at the very beginning of those client discussions. Are you involved? Is your team involved in those early whiteboard talks about what they want their goal to be, in terms of the way they present their brand?
So again, that's the ideal scenario and probably has the most benefit to the brand, is having our team involved earlier on in the process. That takes time. That's not something that happens overnight, right? There's a trust that's needed that has to be developed. But once that trust is developed, if you can have our marketing and sales team involved early on in the process, it brings and allows much more creativity, because our team knows what is possible with digital print, right? The types of embellishments that can be done, the type of security features that can be added, the type of graphics that make sense, how we can help not just the marketing team but also the internal ops team relative to printing what they need when they need it, versus let's guess at how much we're going to sell of this brand new product, and we'll hope that we're accurate.
One topic that keeps coming up in the print world and every part of the world, honestly, is sustainability. How do you see sustainability affecting decisions you make, what your clients are looking for, what they were doing? Any insight on that?
So what I'll say is, key point with Brook and Whittle is that's a heavy concentration of theirs is sustainability, and they bring a lot of innovation to sustainability within the packaging market. And yes, clients more and more are needing those opportunities to be able to have a product that can be recycled, that can, make it through the recycling stream the way it needs to. And having now a sustainability team within Brook and Whittle, I think will have huge dividends for taking what we were doing, which was very, very small amount, trying to find products that could, bring value from a sustainability standpoint. And now we have this great team in Brook and Whittle that can, take that even further. And, it's a heavy concentration on their end, and they're doing really, really cool stuff from a sustainability standpoint.
Now I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine to ask a question like origin story. Why did you get into labels in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting story, but I was building jet engines. I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and I was building jet engines, and I needed a challenge. So, I heard that the label industry was much more challenging than building jet engines. So I decided that it was time to get into something that was a little bit more on the cutting edge. So I do think that there were a lot of positive and really crucial things that I learned in that process that made me not afraid of technology. And I think that it was a key thing in the success of being an early adopter on the digital side, and all the systems things that I learned, all of the IT things that I learned as a young engineer, to me, helped that. But, the transition into labels was challenging on the conventional side. And I had a chance to be in kind of a leadership role in a company, and then decided that I'd rather do it on my own. So I'd always wanted to own my own business. My father had. It was kind of what I'll call an inherited gene of some sort, and I always thought that being involved in my own business was that, and I wasn't going to do that in the aircraft engines business.
Wow, that's cool. That's super cool. All right, what would you consider one of your big fails during this whole process?
Oh, there are lots of failures along the way. I mean, whether it be technology that I thought was going to, be something that would be a great thing to sell in a digital operation that weren't. There were some conventional things that we did from an automation standpoint that were kind of successful, but not totally. I think as long as you're willing to accept failure, you'll have successes if you keep working at it. Fortunately, we had a lot more successes than failures, but there's a lot of failures throughout the time of being in an organization. You just got to overcome those bad decisions and make sure you make a lot of good decisions along the way.
Yeah, you had made a comment in one of our discussions about having the right management at the right time in your business. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Look, what I'll say is that over time, businesses change, and when your business is a certain size, and it may be different for commercial printers than it is for label and packaging, you can manage a business very well on your own, as far as making sure that the orders are being processed, all the teams are doing things up to a certain level. And once you reach that threshold, you need to shift. Now I have to realize I can't do that all anymore, and if I try to, I'm going to hurt the business. And so you have to now depend on additional people within the organization, and you've got to hire those people if they're not there, or give them more responsibility over time. And that happens at different thresholds throughout the growth cycle of the business. And I remember the most challenging, the first ones were easy because it was very easy to take someone within the organization and just give them a more elaborate role where they had to take on more responsibility. That was relatively easy. The hard one was when we started to get larger and we wanted to take the next step. And that becomes challenging because you may not have the right people within the organization. And so you now have to go and find those people, number one. And in some cases, you may either have to let people go because they don't have the skill set that's needed, and it's a negative for them as well as for us. And what I would say is recognizing that that's the case is probably the big thing, and then figuring out how you hire those right people is the other. And me, as an example, I mean, I knew that I had limitations as well. I'm very, very technical. I'm very good strategically, but I'm not the best manager of people. And so I started bringing someone that could take that leadership role from that standpoint, and again, not block the growth of the business because they can manage the day to day. I can still lead from a CEO role, but not have everything, all decisions coming through me, and recognizing your own limitations sometimes is beneficial. It's not that I couldn't do it. I'm just not as good at it as somebody else. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. That just means I know that what I'm good at and what I'm not.
That's not an easy thing to have, is like understanding of yourself and being honest with yourself. So, and I think a lot of people, it's an overlooked quality.
Yeah, it only limits your business, and being able to recognize it and figure out how do you, deal with this within the organization. To me, just understanding that you can do things better than what you're currently doing all the time. And we tried to, build that into all of our team. What we're doing today isn't going to be good enough tomorrow. How do we make the changes so that tomorrow we're ahead of where we were, and stay ahead? And I think it's critical that philosophy kind of stay embedded within the organization.
So are you hiring ahead? In some cases, are you like actually hiring someone for where you want to be? So does that make any sense, what I'm asking?
So the answer is yes and no. Today it's hard to hire anybody. I'm glad that I'm not having to be a part of that process anymore. But certainly throughout the time we were growing, when we saw the right person, whether we had an opening or not, we were trying to hire those right people, because it's always harder to find somebody when you need it than to find somebody along the way that will fill that need that is going to be there down the road. It didn't always work out that way, but in some cases we were able to hire people in advance because we ran into them in some manner and said, we need you. And, it's great when you have that opportunity, but those don't always come along naturally.
So can you stay outside the print industry for much longer?
I definitely can. I love the role that I have today is a strategic role, and I sit on the board of Brook and Whittle, and I love the fact that I can have collaborative conversations about strategic vision and have somebody else do the implementation of it. I think that to me that's the stuff that I always enjoyed. I always enjoyed the collaborative things that were being done. That's part of the reason that I think Dscoop is so fantastic is, the relationships, whether it be within the label and packaging industry or general commercial print, the relationships with those folks within Dscoop that I've been able to create and have over the last, more than a decade is phenomenal. And you get the good, bad, and ugly of what people are seeing within their businesses, and I just think that's an amazing thing. And I love that kind of collaboration.
Jay, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome.
No problem. It's good seeing you guys.
Have a great day.
Hey, important side note for the viewers out there. You may have noticed a different shirt that I'm wearing occasionally during this thing. I look more like a fan of 90s rock and grunge right now. I used to look like sort of a bad golfer. And for anyone who noticed the shirt change, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, we're doing our best with the editing. I don't always do a great job with the way my computer runs on the things. So anyone who noticed, congratulations. I promise this won't be the last time we screw up some stuff in post-production.